Hello and a warm welcome. This is the News at Enter International, reaching you live from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. My name is Justin Bemunyi and Anna Olainka is our sign language interpreter. First, let's begin with the headlines. Labour Party suffers heavy loss in United Kingdom local elections. Prime Minister Keir Starmer under renewed pressure over the outcome of the election. Chad declares a 20-day state of emergency in the violence-hit Lake Chad region following waves of deadly attacks blamed on Boko Haram. And wrapping up his state visit to Botswana, Rwandan President Paul Kagame turns attention to the country's economic powerhouse, the Diamond Trading Company of Botswana. And once again, I thank you so much for joining us. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been endorsed for a second-term bid and honored with a He for She award by the Forum for 2027 APC Female Aspirants Network in Abuja. Momso Damien Dati reports that the event witnessed a turnout of women from across the 36 states and the FCT.
Diverse women groups from across the country make their way to the Mariam Babangida National Center for Women Development Abuja. Female aspirants on the platform of the All Progressives Congress, forming a strong coalition in determination to ensure their candidacy see the light of the day in the next general elections.
True democracy is only achieved when political parties intentionally support women's aspirants.
It's not really about political party, it's about what you believe and what you try to do and what you work hard to do.
You have to learn how to engage with the media. Make sure that you support the sister next to you. If we are not on that table, we cannot defend what women want.
Most important here is the appreciation of Mr. President with an award and endorsement.
Women are happy. Women are here to endorse the president for his re-election 2020. There is no vacancy in us. The people who have come out, find a way to give them ticket, especially where they are qualified, they have the capacity, and we know they can win an election. We are requested to pay 50%, and I think the party has done very well. We've gotten more than 500 women contesting.
The voices of the women must be heard in the corridors of power. They all agree. Momsa Damien Dati, NTA News.
Nigeria has reaffirmed its commitment to strengthening migration governance, improve interagency collaboration, and remains resolute in the protection of the rights of migrants. Speaking on behalf of the African group at the International Migration Review Forum, holding at the United Nations headquarters in New York, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, Dr. Bernard M. Doro, called for stronger international cooperation, increased financial and technical support for developing countries, while advocating for expanded legal migration pathways.
It is worthy of note that 8 years after the adoption of the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration, Nigeria has continued to demonstrate strong political will and sustained institutional commitment as a champion country. We have adopted a whole of government and whole of society approach to ensure our migration policies are not siloed. A defining milestone is the recent review and validation of Nigeria's national migration policy. This document, along with its integrated implementation plan, serve as our roadmap, ensuring global GCM objectives are translated directly into national realities.
The minister further identified Nigeria's key migration priorities to include strengthening migration data systems, improved labor mobility systems, and stronger diaspora engagement capable of driving sustainable development across Africa. Now, UK leader Keir Starmer says he takes responsibility for a very tough local election result that saw the hard right make big gains, but has vowed to carry on as Prime Minister. Starmer added that he will not walk away and plunge the country into chaos, saying after his ruling Labour Party lost hundreds of councillors in England. Labour was also set for humiliating results in voting for devolved parliaments in Scotland and Wales due to be announced later.
Because the results are tough. They are very tough. And there is no sugarcoating this. We have lost brilliant Labour representatives across the country. These are people who put so much into their communities, so much into our party and our movement. And that hurts. I think the vast majority of people do understand that we face huge challenges as a country. We've had a series of economic shocks in recent years, and there's a very difficult international situation that we face. They know that. But they still want their lives to improve. They still want to see the change that we promised. They know the status quo is letting them down and they're frustrated. They don't feel the change.
The ballot was the biggest electoral test for Starmer since Labour ousted the Conservatives following 14 years in power in a landslide election victory in 2024. The grim predictions made by opinion polls were borne out in results. The anti-migrant Reform UK party had gained 478 seats, while Labour had lost 322 across 57 of the 136 English councils to announce results by mid-Friday. Reform had taken control of 3 councils, the counties of Suffolk and Essex in eastern England and the central town of Newcastle on the Lyme. This big loss for Labour could amplify calls for Starmer, 63, to resign or face a long-rumoured party leadership challenge. Starmer is now one of the most unpopular prime ministers ever, according to polls. Reform and the left-wing Greens, led by self-described eco-populist Zach Polanski, benefited from widespread disillusionment with Starmer's government and policy missteps. In recent weeks, Starmer has become embroiled in a scandal over Peter Mandelson, who was sacked as ambassador to Washington over his links to U.S. sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, wrapping up a state visit to Botswana, Rwandan President Paul Kagame turned his attention to the country's economic powerhouse, the diamond trading company Botswana in Gaborone.
The facility, a joint venture between Botswana and multinational diamond conglomerate De Beers, is one of the most advanced diamond sorting and valuation hubs in the world, capable of handling up to 45 million carats a year. Walking through high-tech sorting rooms, Kagame saw how rough diamonds are analyzed and processed at industrial scale, where precision technology meets geology to drive one of Botswana's most important export sectors. Gemstone sales account for a quarter of the country's GDP, but falling global prices are forcing it to diversify its economy. The country in Southern Africa is vital for De Beers, which produces 70% of its diamonds. The visit followed a full day of diplomacy with President Duma Boko, where both leaders signed 6 cooperation agreements covering areas from air services to taxation. The two countries also plan to formalize cooperation between the Botswana Investment and Trade Center and the Rwanda Development Board, along with a double taxation agreement aimed at easing trade and investment flows. The Botswana government described the visit as an important milestone in advancing bilateral relations towards a high-impact economic partnership. The ties between Botswana and Rwanda have strengthened steadily since 2019, when Kagame made his first official visit to the country. That trip led to the signing of a general framework agreement, which authorities say laid the foundation for closer cooperation.
We now move to Chad, where the country has declared a 20-day state of emergency in the violence-hit Lake Chad region, following a wave of deadly attacks blamed on jihadist group Boko Haram. And dozens of people have been killed in attacks reportedly carried out by Al-Qaeda-affiliated fighters in central Mali.
The decision for the declaration came after at least 26 army personnel, including 2 senior generals, were killed in ambushes that triggered nationwide mourning and intensified military operations. The government spokesman, Gassim Sharif, said authorities review the worsening security and humanitarian situation in the region, citing renewed Boko Haram attacks, civilian displacement, and growing threats to people and property. The areas bordering Cameroon, Chad, Nigeria, Niger, Lake Chad's remote islands have long served as strongholds for Boko Haram and ISWAP fighters as attacks on regional forces continue to intensify. Sharif also said President Muhammad Idris Deby thanked the government of Nigeria for its support and coordination in the ongoing counter-terrorism operations. In other news, according to local security and administrative sources in Mali, the attacks on the villages of Kori and Gomosogu in the Mopti region killed at least 30 people a day earlier. 3 sources, including an aid worker, a diplomat and a security source, separately told the news agency Reuters that the assailants had hit 2 unnamed localities in Mopti, killing at least 50. The latest attacks come a day after armed fighters stormed the Kenyoroba Central Prison, a recently built complex about 60 kilometers, that is 37 miles southwest of Bamako, which houses 2,500 prisoners, including at least 72 inmates considered high value by the Malian state.
Now, the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, CDHR, has condemned the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, for berating the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, over Tuesday's judgment awarding 100 million naira to 2 operatives of the Department of State Services, DSS, defamed by the NGO. Justice Halilu Yusuf also ordered SERAP to pay operatives Sarah John and Gabriel Ogundele 1 million naira as costs of litigation, tender apology in 2 national newspapers and 2 television stations, as well as on its website and X handle. SERAP and persons associated with the NGO have condemned the verdict, describing it as a travesty of justice and an alleged attempt by government to muzzle free speech. But CDHR frowned at SERAP's outbursts, saying it was at variance with the ideals of the NGO, which claims to be championing socio-economic rights and accountability. It says while citizens and advocacy groups have the constitutional right of freedom of expression and public criticism, such rights must be exercised responsibly and within the bounds of the law. CDHR advised SERAP to respect the judgment of the court, comply with all lawful directives contained in the judgment pending any appeal, and to refrain from further public statements capable of worsening tensions or undermining judicial authority. In a similar reaction, the Center Against Injustice and Domestic Violence also chided SERAP for deriding the judgment of the Court of Competent Jurisdiction. The court's position, in a statement signed by its executive director, Benga Soloki, who SERAP first made the claim that DSS officers invaded their Abuja office in 2024. It is worrying that the tweet is still pinned on their X handle of SERAP 2 years after. It advised that they in the human rights community should lead by example and should not be seen as breaching human rights in the name of free speech. Now, members of the National Association of Nigerian Students have thrown their weight behind the recent verdict of the High Court of the FCT, awarding 100 million naira in damages against the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project for SERAP's false accusation against the Department of State Services, DSS. Presenting a letter in support of the judgment to the Federal Ministry of Justice, Abuja, they held that neither SERAP nor any other entity is above the law.
Jaja, we dey go. Judiciary independence and the constitutional right of citizens to seek lawful redress against defamatory and injurious statements. It is publicly established that SERAP had described the official visit of DSS operative to his Abuja office as an unlawful invasion, raid, and intimidation, thereby creating widespread public perception capable of damaging the integrity, professionalism, and reputation of the affected operative, and by extension, public confidence in law security institutions.
Now, the Federal High Court Abuja has refused the no-case submission of Omoyele Sowore, saying that a prima facie case of cyberbullying of the president has been established against him by the prosecution. Justice Mohammed Umar gave the order in a ruling on the no-case submission of the defendant in Abuja. Judiciary correspondent Austin Anyebe reports.
Ruling on the no-case submission entered by the defendant, Justice Mohammed Umar considered the argument by both parties in their written addresses. He held that the argument by the defense counsel, Masha Abubakar, that the prosecution has not called valid witnesses in the matter, more so that he did not call President Tinubu, who is alleged to have been cyberbullied, and relevant documentary evidence not presented before the court is not relevant at the stage. He said what is relevant at this stage is whether a prima facie case has been established against the defendant. After chronicling the case of the prosecution, he held that the Cyber Crimes Prevention and Prohibition Act clearly laid down what constitutes an offense of cyberbullying and cyberstalking, of which he feels the prosecution has linked charge to the provisions in the Act. Hence, Omoyele Sowore has a case to answer and ordered that he enters his defense. But immediately after the pronouncement, the defense counsel sought the permission of Omoyele Sowore to speak, which after light argument by the parties was obliged. Omoyele Sowore told the judge to recuse himself from the case as he no longer has confidence in him to get justice. He cited instances of alleged intimidation of his counsel, saying the judge asking his lawyer to come and kneel down before the court was an affront. The judge asked him to come formally on the request on 19th of May 2026. From the Federal High Court, Abuja, Austin Anyebe, NT News.
When I move to security issues, where the Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Waidi Shaibu has charged sergeant majors to maintain regimental and ethical conduct among the troops. Haruna Mohammed reports that the Army Chief gave the charge during the closing ceremony of the first Regimental Sergeant Majors Convention put together by the 1 Division Nigerian Army.
The regimental sergeant majors, as custodians of discipline, military ethics and regimentation in the Nigerian Army, mentor soldiers and maintain professional standard at unit level. And this convention, put together by the 1 Division Nigerian Army, amplifies the need to inform and enhance their capacity. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Waidi Shaibu, in his address, reiterates the convention provided an opportunity to strengthen leadership skills, professionalism, and operational effectiveness across the Nigerian Army.
The leadership and mentorship standards you uphold will greatly shape and define the ideas of professionalism that our soldiers adopt as the measure of true soldiering.
He urged the participants to return to their units with renewed commitment towards building discipline and combat-ready soldiers.
As senior mentors, your ability to communicate clearly, firmly and responsibly must be exemplary, both online and offline. Equally important is your role as mentors. Mentorship in today's context goes beyond traditional approaches. It requires understanding of the values, motivations, and behavioral patterns of our young soldiers.
As senior non-commissioned officers, they are expected to guide younger personnel on responsible social media usage and uphold the Army's core values of discipline, loyalty, selfless service, among other vices at all times. Haruna Mohammed, NTA News.
Now, the Nigeria Police Force has called for stronger collaboration with the Police Community Relations Committee, PCRC, as the organization marks its 42nd anniversary. Inspector General of Police Olatunji Disu, represented by the Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of logistics and supply, Kenechukwu Owemele, made the appeal at the anniversary event in Abuja. Let's have details with Francis Form.
42 years and still counting. The Police Community Relations Committee, PCRC, has served as a critical bridge between the Nigeria Police Force and the public, promoting trust, cooperation, and community participation in policing nationwide. Established in 1984 to strengthen police-citizen relations, the committee has continued to play key roles in intelligence gathering, conflict resolution, and grassroots support for security operations. Now, as the PCRC marks 42 years of existence, the Nigeria Police Force says stronger community partnerships remain vital in tackling emerging security threats.
The Inspector General of Police is committed to a policing model that is proactive, intelligence-driven, technology-enabled, and community-rooted. But no strategy, no reform, and no innovation can succeed without the trust and the involvement of the people.
For safe communities to thrive, police must be protected from attacks, and civilians must be protected from abuse. PCRC
National Chairman of the PCRC, Ibrahim Olaniyo, says the committee, founded by former Inspector General of Police Etem Inyang, began as a modest initiative to foster better understanding between the police and the public.
We recognize the importance and support of Nigeria Police. Reason since inception of this administration, we try to give back, to show love.
The Nigeria Police Force also reaffirmed its commitment to community policing, pledging to build a safer society where citizens feel protected, valued, and actively involved in security efforts. Francis Form, NTA News.
Now, towards addressing insecurity in parts of the Northwest, the Department of State Services, DSS, has convened its 2026 Northwest Zonal Directors Conference in Kano to strengthen intelligence coordination and interagency security response across the region. Our Salisu reports that the conference also brought together other heads of security agencies and senior government officials to deliberate on emerging threats, regional security, and strategies for enhancing operational collaboration.
Northwest region continues to contend with security challenges, including banditry, kidnapping, cross-border crimes, and activities of armed criminal groups. In response, the Department of State Services is strengthening regional intelligence coordination and interagency collaboration aimed at improving information sharing and joint security operations across the zone.
Our mandate of protecting the country's democracy by providing development intelligence that will enhance the living standard of our people to our stakeholders is also being discharged with determination and distinction.
I therefore urge the forum to come up with a proactive, actionable resolutions that will enhance operational efficiency. The collaboration between the Nigerian Army and the Department of State Services remains indispensable to achieving operational successes and national security objectives.
Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf reaffirmed the commitment of the Kano State government to supporting security agencies through sustained cooperation and institutional backing to enhance public safety and stability.
That we will continue by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to support all the security agencies with logistics and the equipment to complement this effort.
The conference forms part of ongoing efforts to reinforce proactive security management and develop coordinated regional responses to emerging security threats in the Northwest. In Kano, Awal Salisu, NTA News.
Nigerian youths are faced with challenges of structural and systematic barriers that limit their ability to participate effectively in the economy. Scholars of Nile University of Nigeria are now advocating for purposeful policies and interventions that promote skill application and entrepreneurship that creates pathways to self-employment. This was at the 7th inaugural lecture of the institution held in Abuja, and Francis Udojo was there and now reports.
The lecture delivered by Professor Hawa Lamino Abubakar, titled Entrepreneurship as a Development Architecture, the Lamino Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Achievement Process Leap for Emerging Economies, showcased key objectives on improving ecosystem in emerging economies that provides economic growth, job creation, and social development. It will also advocate for collaborative and systematic reforms, among others. With Nigeria's labor market facing significant mismatch between graduates and available formal jobs, the scholar and the Vice Chancellor of Nile University, Professor Dili Dogo, believes there is need for stakeholders to provide necessary exposure to entrepreneurship structures and opportunities that will prepare youth to be self-reliant or even employers of labor.
We talk a lot about the mindset, creating a fertile foundation. But if they go into the actual ecosystem, they can't thrive because there's not that proper access to finance. There's not that proper policies that would support the entrepreneurs to thrive in the ecosystem. So how do we then provide an enabling environment that is intentional for entrepreneurs to thrive?
What we will advise, as articulated in this inaugural lecture, is the fact that all the enablers, creating the necessary environment for entrepreneurs to thrive, and we must work as a country to ensure that all those aspects that limit entrepreneurship, all the disenablers are disabled so that we can have a thriving community of entrepreneurs here in Nigeria and across board.
Though evidence shows abundance of talent and creativity, scholars say the missing link is the alignment of systems, institutions, and resources to convert potentials to measurable outcomes, hence calling for fragmented efforts towards a unified performance-driven ecosystem. Francis Udojo, NTA News.
This is where we end the news at this time. Thank you so much for being a part of it. My name is Justin Bemui, and Hannah Olainka has been the sign language interpreter.